This is a really hard episode to start. I think we should probably just dive right into this somber affair. This is the 102nd episode of the Belligerent Beavs Podcast. We are still here. We have not been canceled yet. There has not been a TV deal or a new conference realignment announced that eradicates our existence. Despite what's been happening over the last 4 days. And I really wanted to start this episode with something witty, something funny, some optimism, and maybe some creativity. But where we're at right now on this Sunday evening of August 6th, 2023, I don't know where to channel any of those things from. And this time a week ago, where we were at the pack, it felt like we had a pack 9 in place to an extent. It is now a pack 4, and it does not appear likely that those 4 schools, including yours truly, the Oregon State Beavers, will be able to pull off something of a Hail Mary and keep the Pac 12, Pac 10, just Pacific Coast Athletic Conference alive. And I don't want this to go fully into feeling like a funeral episode, but I don't think we need to shy away from how sad we feel, how enraged we feel, maybe how confused we feel a little bit. I think this was an episode where after last week, we were like, we'll talk a little bit more about conference realignment. We'll talk about options and possibilities or whatever, but we really want to get into the depth chart of this dope ass football team we have that's going to be playing games in 2023 and has a schedule set in stone that cannot be challenged. And those 12 games absolutely will happen. And we want to talk about that team. We want to talk about Jonathan Smith and his coaching staff. But for this episode, if you're looking to get away from the realignment reaction, I'll say pause and then come back to this, because I think tonight we're only going to be talking about this. And that is everything that's happened since the last time we talked. And basically what that comes down to is Oregon and Washington both bolting for greener, emphasis on greener pastures in the Midwest to join the Big Ten. Arizona State, and Utah joining the Big 12. Oregon State, Washington State, Stanford, and Cal remaining here. Where does this leave us? We don't know. There's a lot of hurt people out there right now. There's a lot of sad people. All 3 of us are in that exact same population as well. I am going to stop talking here in a second. I want to hear from JP. I want to hear from Benny. We've got some questions that I think all 3 of us want to just sort of hear everyone just kind of speculate on. And I think maybe we can end this episode with a fuck everyone. Let's take over the world. Burn the boats and not come back. And maybe there's a chance that we leave here with that kind of optimism in tow. There is a chance that this still could be the greatest Beaver football season of our lives. And I don't want to downplay that. And I don't want to second guess all of the work that the student athletes in Corvallis right now are doing. But fuck, this sucks. We are here right now and we have no idea what the future holds. I think, yeah, let's just open it up for all 3 of us to chime in here on what's going on, what the last 72 hours have been like for each of us. I know they've been pretty hard for everyone. But Benny, I want to start with you a little bit here, just because, JP and I, obviously we love Oregon State. All of us do. I was sitting here today just trying to gather my thoughts and being like, this thing that I've loved for 17 years may not get to exist anymore, at least not exist in the fashion that it should, because 4 suits in a boardroom decided that it didn't matter to them. But this is a thing you've loved for 37 years and all of the years of your whole family's existence. As basically as long as there's been a Weehage, there's been a Weehage at Oregon State. And that's one of the many things that makes college athletics and just the college sports fandom beautiful, and different from pro sports fandom. So just, I'm not even asking you to speak comfort to me, Benny, but I want to know what's going through your mind and just how you've reacted to this and maybe where you stand right now, as it is now 8:09 p.m. Pacific time on Sunday, August 6th, 2023. We haven't been told anything or any news is coming. We have no idea, but at least we've had about 4 days or so to wrap our heads around this new reality that's happening after this coming school year. So yeah, just how are you feeling, my guy?
Yeah, I think for me, it is like obviously a lot of emotions. The two that are most prevalent are obviously anger and anger at so many entities. I don't know if I'm in the minority here. I don't think that I am after the numbers came out of what the Pac-12 deal was going to be. And I don't give a fuck what anyone else thinks. Oregon's at the top of that list, 100%. You can blame it on Kliavkoff, you can blame it on Larry Scott, you can blame it on the chancellors, but when it comes down to it, the linchpin that held the pack together was based on Oregon's decision. And we'll get into a lot of that more about the possibilities of why Oregon made that decision. I don't think any of them are legitimate or really make sense on the surface. But I'm also in the same respect feeling optimism. I think number one, I want to say if we decide to go the Big 12 route, I don't want to go the Big 12 route unless Washington State comes with us. I think number one, I love Washington State. I love Washington State fans.
We love the Coug, and we love the Coug even more now. Like,
yes, but also like it would be so hypocritical of us to sit here and blame Oregon and Washington and not stick with Wazoo. Sure. I think that is something that we have to keep in mind, but that Big 12 route is open. And, you know, there's other possibilities. The fact that we have $400 million, seemingly, according to John Canzano, in the Pac-12 fund, what happens to that money? And if that money gets split evenly and Oregon State gets $100 million, that allows us to continue at the same budget going forward. So optimism, yes, but at the top of that list, it's anger. And like you said, I don't consider myself a bigger Beaver fan than anybody else, even if you became a Beaver fan yesterday. But I do have memories, like my earliest memories are being in Old Parker Stadium, and playing teams like I remember going to a game where it was Cade McNown, who was the quarterback for UCLA, and being at Research Stadium or at Parker Stadium at that point. And watching Akili Smith for Oregon come into Parker Stadium and the Ken Simonton around the corner to win it in double overtime, like those are all things that are going to cease to exist. And the fact that people are like, oh, this is history. This is not only tradition in a college football sense, but tradition for families. Like families were going to the Civil War year after year after year for 50, 60, 70 years, man. And like, that is not going to happen anymore. It is so sad that this was a decision, like you said, made really by one boomer. And that's what it is. We'll get into this later, but the contract that was put in front of the Pac-12, the Pac-9 at that point, is the future. Streaming is the future. Cable's dying. Give it 6 years until Oregon is getting a fair share of the revenue in the Big Ten, and streaming sports is going to be significantly more popular than cable sports. But at the crux of it, like you said, it is the fact that you have people who didn't go to these universities, who have no affiliation with these universities other than being an employee. And they're making decisions that are affecting the lives of people who actually give a fuck about these universities, who actually give a fuck about these athletic programs, when they're most likely not going to be associated with Oregon or Washington or whatever school in 10 years.
Right. Well, and an aspect of this that no one really seems to be bringing up, and I know realignment goes deeper than this week, and it goes deeper than the day that USC and UCLA announced that they were leaving for the Big Ten last summer.
Yeah.
But when they announced they're leaving last summer, that was a lot of puppetry by then Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren, who was also part of that quote unquote alliance between the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the ACC when Texas and Oklahoma initially announced that they were leaving the Big 12 for the SEC. And Kevin Warren left to go be the president of the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
Like he's out of this. And I understand there's a lot of business decisions, and this comes down to money. And whenever we talk about all of this and like how much we love college football and the spirit of college football and the soul of it and everything, we know that college sports has always had a sleazy underbelly. Like that has always existed. We're not being naive to that ever like not existing. But like, as you said, Benny, these people who are either employees of such and such university or employee of whatever conference or whatever TV company or whatever network who aren't in this for the long haul. Kevin Warren got the fuck out. He has nothing to do with this anymore. And he was a major player in it happening.
Can we also take a second to acknowledge, so I see Oregon fans and Oregon affiliation to the university or the athletic program saying that this was a money thing. The fact that they were getting either $25 million with the Apple deal or $32 million with the Big Ten deal,
right?
When Phil Knight has given you over $1 billion over the course of the last 20 years,
right?
He's given you $1 billion. So the fact that you say you're going to bolt for a $7 million difference, get the fuck out of here. That is not it. Their decision. You cannot convince me it came down to money.
Right. And I'm not sure that it did. I think, there is maybe just a little bit of who is the power broker in college athletics right now. Let's roll with that. JP, I do want to hear from you. You, of the three of us, you are most in touch with that the world of, not necessarily, I won't necessarily say like streaming, but just like you have a great knowledge of modern tech and sort of like where the world is going. Obviously, I think a lot of us can look at this deal on paper. What was reported on Thursday turned out, or is reportedly not super accurate. Like it was actually a little bit more fruitful deal than initially reported. The targeted subscription numbers weren't that outlandish based on, how many people have Apple TV and how many people have iPhones, but also there's a little bit of flaws in the logic. I think what this really does come down to is a few programs, Oregon specifically, probably Arizona. It sounds like Arizona State was really aligned with us and trying to keep the pack together for as long as they could. What is your reaction to this? And you can let us know from a spiritual side or just the personal side of this, but also just you sent both Benny and I a bunch of texts over the last few days about how, when you just say like, oh, Apple TV Plus is $20 million, Big Ten is going to offer Oregon and Washington $30 million a year, and then add $1 million per season until the next grant of rights comes up for the conference in 2030. It can look like that deal was quite a bit sweeter, but obviously nothing in this business is ever that simple. So just what at this moment, like, what can you tell us about your understanding of what was offered, what was turned down, and what might be left on the table?
I haven't heard much about what's left on the table. I do know that the PAC is still in conversations with Apple. So while the figures may change, I have a little bit of optimism that the streaming deal may still exist and that we may still be a part of it. And I talked about this last summer. I said, if the Pac-12 wants to survive, the Pac-10 wants to survive, we need to embrace streaming. That was the number one thing we needed to do. I said we need to get involved with Apple. We need to let them put their weight behind our brand. We need to let their distribution, their production, everything that we couldn't do well, they do well. And we need to let them do that. When I said that last year, I kind of thought it was a pipe dream, to be frank. I thought, if this is going to happen, we'll be golden. And I thought but I don't think Apple wants to play in this realm just yet. So when the chatter started to build up about Apple being a heavy player, I mean, if you remember early on, so much of it was, it's Amazon or Apple, somebody's streaming. We don't know who. It's streaming heavy, right? And everyone was just talking about that, but still focused on who the linear partners were going to be. And I just ignored a lot of that noise because it is noise. Benny, you talked about it. Like, the world is shifting to streaming everywhere. Cord cutting is at the most rapid pace of all time. I'm sure people will argue, well, you don't need cable to get Fox. Well, find me someone who's got an antenna that's under 50. Okay, like, that's not happening anymore either. And like, look, Fox as a network may still remain, and they still may pump up their streaming game. I mean, we don't know that. I know that they've got plenty of financial troubles from their subsidiary networks or peripheral networks, I guess. And that could come into play as well. If they're mismanaged over the next 6 years while linear TV crumbles, they could have nothing to offer. And I thought the safest bet was Apple, and I thought that it was originally the deal, I guess, was $23 million. When George went back to Apple and told him this isn't going to work, they came back Friday morning with a $25 million and some better numbers for the subscription thresholds. But as it stood, I guess it was the $23 million base, maybe $25 million, still at 1.7 million subscribers, you get the 30 or 31 million per team.
Which would equal about what Oregon and Washington are getting right now in the Big Ten.
Ignoring travel expenses, yes.
Right.
It would be exactly. It would be status
quo.
Which are
big, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, then there's the threshold for the 50 million. But I think what's incredibly frustrating for me, like, isn't the fact that people looked at a deal on a financial level and decided one was better for them than the other. If that's their choice. It was stupid, but it's their choice. We could have been at the forefront of sports entertainment for the next 50 years. We could have been the ones who did it. Are there other ESPNs? Why has ESPN dominated linear cable TV for the last 40 plus years? Why? Was it because they were the first ones there? Do you think that had anything to do with it, that they had a leg up on all the Fox Sports Nets and all the FS1s and everything else that's come after them as much as they've tried? ESPN's still standing, barely,
right?
Because they're going to be 5 years too late to getting on streaming as well. So I feel like this missed opportunity is just, it's deflating. I'm angry about the people who made the decisions to kill off the conference, as Scott Barnes put it. And I know people are spitting venom at Scott Barnes, and I think some of it might be a bit warranted. But at the same point, there's not a whole lot athletic directors can do in this regard. And what Scott Barnes has done for Oregon State since he has joined has been nothing but progressive and on the up. So
there are so many villains to be mad at before it's Scott Barnes in this situation.
But I'm saying, but as he put it, this decision put our university, the one that we love, in harm's way. And it's not just about the current and future situation. This means a lot to me personally because I graduated from there. My diploma says Oregon State University. And when other schools decide that my identity is not worthy of being on the same level as theirs, and they don't give a rat's fucking ass about anyone else who's experiencing the same thing, that just pisses me off. Because now... Like, people need to see a product. They need to experience it from afar in order to understand that it might contain some value to them if they have no experience to it. If we are pushed aside for less primetime TV slots or less accessibility or less money, any of the combination of those will diminish everything that Oregon State actually means. And it's not just across football, but it's across every single sport, across every single program. And it will diminish what my value of a diploma, what everything that I went through to try to earn that thing means as well. And the same goes for everybody else. So it's not just who goes to the games and who sits in the stands. It's more than that. And I think that got totally lost in all of this because all these people we're talking about were TV numbers for viewership from football. And that pisses me off. It honestly is like being stabbed like 6 times and you're still alive and you really just wish you would have died because there were so many opportunities to not be the odd ones out and none of them were in our control.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to piggyback real quick off of what you were saying, like I'm obviously very upset at the fact that Oregon State's future is uncertain, and the worst case scenario is a really, really bad scenario. But I'm also not equally, but I'm also really upset at the fact that we let this Apple deal go.
Yeah, like, that's exactly. The opportunity was there.
Yes. And that's the thing is not only like now, yes, we could potentially face the reality of playing in the Mountain West. That sucks. But the contrary to that would be with Apple. And let me ask you this, with the Big Ten, they're the schools that are getting the average payout, not the prorated amount that Oregon and Washington are getting, but the average, that's 40 million, right?
It's 60 million, I think.
60. Okay. Yeah. So 60 million. That's the media contract that they have right now. That media contract is funded by the ads that they sell. And so if cable is being cut and people are moving to streaming, do you think that ad number is going to increase 6 years from now? No way. So the 60 million that the Big Ten schools are getting right now is the max that they'll ever get through a company like Fox, who's exclusively on cable, or through an antenna. Like Apple has a market cap of $2.68 trillion. That is fucking 10% of the GDP of the United States. That's an insane amount of money. And Apple's never gone and attacked an industry or a niche market that they haven't moved to either the top or near the top of the list. They don't do things half-assed. And if they with the MLS, that was their dipping the toes into streaming sports. They have worked out a lot of the kinks, right? So if they're going to streaming sports and they're going to college football, which is one of the most lucrative sports in the United States, they will, because they will sign a media contract with someone. They will do it well. And whoever gets on that first media contract, like, you're one of the luckiest schools out there. It is the future. And you're going to see these schools be doing the same thing that they're doing now in 6 years. They're going to be jumping ship and trying to join a conference that's financially stable. And Apple, whatever media deal they have, that conference is going to be financially stable.
I do have one devil's advocate question, I guess. And it's not that I'm arguing against anything that you just said, Benny. And I think this is something that's fundamentally flawed with college athletics, specifically college football, is all of it comes down to getting to a bowl game, and the bowl games and the televised bowl games and the eyeballs and everything else. Literally, like, the entire bowl system is owned by ESPN. It's created by ESPN. Yeah. They're the ones powering the whole system. So when it comes to streaming, couldn't they just be like, nah, they don't count. We're not including them. We don't need to, because the Pac-12, Pac-West, whatever it is, doesn't compete on the same level as the conferences that we're partnered with or that we essentially own. All of it's flawed. All of it's screwed up. Honestly, outside of Oregon State games, I'm not going to watch a second of college football this year. I can't stomach it. It's disgusting what it's become. If you're thinking about the last 10 years, the Pac-12 started the conference level patriotism.
Yep.
And I think that this is what pissed off ESPN and Fox. And I think they came for blood after that, because all of a sudden the tide shifted and it became about the conference. Then the institutions and the universities are part of them. And it was force-fed to us on broadcast, during games, during promos, during commercials. This is Big Ten country, Big Ten football. You just saw it. It became more than it ever been as an identity for a fan. And that was driven by the networks, because it's a lot easier to own the Big Ten than it is to own 16 schools. So we don't have schools anymore, really, that people have fandom for. People have fandom for these conferences. These conferences you're only a fan of these conferences because of these cable networks that have slammed it down your throat. I don't know where it goes from here. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think that at this point, it either all falls apart or it's destroyed forever. And either way is not good. And I don't want to be a sensationalist, but I don't know what route saves college football from the inevitable.
Well, I don't know what saves it, because I think there are different ways of measuring success. There are different ways of measuring what we would deem safety. And I think the three of us probably all have similar ideas of what safety for college football means that differs significantly from the people who are excited about all of this. Where college football is headed currently is 2 mega conferences of about 30-ish teams that between the two of them have most of the networking superpower. They'll be on all of the most in-demand times. Those teams will be playing probably around the same-ish times each week. You'll know where to find them. You'll be able to find them anytime you turn on your TV at 11 a.m. Boom, there's Alabama. Boom, there's Georgia. Boom, there's Ohio State. Boom, there's Michigan. Always there, always on time. And we've had something for that already. You know what we had for that? That exact same setup. Is called the fucking NFL. And you can watch it Thursday, Sunday, Monday. It's on constantly, and a million other channels talk about it. 30 teams of the best in the world that are always playing the same style, playing similar opponents in similar stadiums. You can't even really you need to look at the color of the end zone to see where they're playing, because all of the stadiums look the same. And it's always at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Pacific time, and 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. Same. Add 3 hours for Eastern, add 2 for Central, 1 for Mountain. It's fucking easy. It's the NFL. It happens like clockwork. The reason why college football was such a smash success, and I think in a way that we will probably, I hope we can talk about other sports at some point. I think this was a horrible week for college basketball. I think it was a horrible week for every other college sport. But in a way that I think college football, despite the fact that football is just the main moneymaker in the American sports market, college football was able to achieve a level of color and pageantry that even college basketball couldn't possess with March Madness and everything. College basketball felt like, I think and we all love college basketball here. I'm big college basketball fans on this podcast. I think there was a lot of people who didn't watch college basketball, who watched 10 NBA games a week, who thought, why would I watch college basketball when I can watch the best basketball in the world, which is the NBA, which is happening at the same time. And I think college football always benefited from it. People who loved the NFL being like, well, there's nothing happening in the NFL on Saturdays. Also, when LSU and Auburn get together, it's going to be fucking fireworks in a way that I don't see in the AFC North, regardless of how many Bengals and Ravens are on my fantasy team. That was something that was a magic recipe that college football had, where it was, even when we knew, like, okay, this is going to be Bama, Georgia, Bama, Clemson, when Clemson had Deshaun for those few years, and we kind of knew who you could predict pretty clearly who was going to end up in the national championship game before week 1. It was never this like, oh my God, who's going to win the national championship, whatever. But the path to get there was always the most interesting of every single sport that was on TV that any American citizen had the opportunity to watch. That was the magic. That was why people loved it. People will stick with it because of the equity that's been built up with college football. I'm not saying that all of this is stupid because it's going to be like, oh, these mega conferences, like they're not going to lose casual fans because of this new arrangement. But in preparation for this episode, I rewatched the great ESPN 30 for 30 Requiem for the Big East, which was a great college conference of great East Coast basketball schools that got destroyed by football and football money and greedy football agenda. The great sports writer Charles Pierce said at the end of it on why there was no option for the Big East to succeed or the Big East to like go forward was because they drove out all the poets and they brought in all the salesmen, and that's what killed the Big East. And that's what I think is going to dictate all of college sports. And what you're going to end up with is these 2 mega conferences. Call them the Big Ten and the SEC, or if you want to, just think of it as the AFC NFC Junior because it's NFL Junior And it's just watered down professional football on Saturday. You don't have to see LA schools go into Corvallis or the Palouse anymore, which is something that I would argue made college football great. And that will still happen for a little bit in the SEC. There are like schools like Mississippi State aren't left out in the cold like we are just because of their current standing. I have no qualms with y'all, but it's like people are going to be like, we're a year away from them being like, why are we in Starkville right now? Like, let's get Saban out of Starkville. Let's protect this investment that we're making. Like it's like Charles Pierce said, they drove out all the poets and they brought in all the salesmen, and no amount of storytelling, pageantry, color, fun, any of the reasons that anyone listening to this podcast or any college football podcast fell in love with the game mattered. That's naive to even say right now, because I doubt that ever mattered to these people calling the shots, but at least it existed. And this past week, we took a big, strong step in the direction of that kind of optimism, spirit, human love, and stubbornness for the game and for the belief that anything is possible, just fading into oblivion. And it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And the biggest con in this entire situation is that these TV execs who their job is to get as much money as they can and like wreck whatever they need to wreck in order to get that money. But the biggest con is convincing fans that this is good for them, right? Yeah. Because like Oregon and Washington have been invited to the Big X for less than 72 hours. And I'm already seeing Oregon and Washington fans saying, oh, we should replace Maryland with Florida State. We should replace Rutgers with Clemson, right? Like I'm seeing that. And the fact that they have conned the average sports fan to think in that manner is a tragedy.
Of course, Oregon fans already feel more entitled to a conference that Rutgers has been in for a decade. Rutgers in the Big X doesn't make sense either. I'm not saying it does, but of course this is where we're at. And Benny, you and I are bigger European soccer fans, but like it's wild that in the world of European soccer, the most selfish, fucked up sporting culture on the planet, the Suits tried this. And every single fan, even the fans of the Habs, said, fuck you, this is dumb. Real Madrid fans, Barca fans, Man City fans, all of them were like, fuck this Super League nonsense. Like, don't take our heritage and our history and our community away from this.
Right. And you look at the European soccer clubs, right? Everything in Europe is older, but the European soccer leagues have been there for a really long time. But the vast majority of the rivalries over there are newer than the Civil War. Yeah. The Civil War's been being played since motherfuckers were wearing petticoats in 1894. We've been playing since 1894. That is 20 years removed from the Civil War. That's fucking crazy. And
the actual Civil War.
Yeah. And so when you have right, you have people that are over in Europe saying, hey, these rivalries have been here for too long, and their rivalries aren't as long as the Civil War is. It's just like, you have people that happen to be in the halves with Oregon and Washington being convinced that this is a good thing. Yeah. That's sad.
Well, and I also got to say, I'm sick of everyone celebrating at our demise. That's what's like just so pathetic.
I've had so many conversations in the last 72 hours about this, and it's the people who are the most celebratory in my circle have been Duck fans. To give them credit, 2 to 3 diehard Duck fans I know who are furious about this. I won't mention you by name. Good on you for having a soul. It's not a huge bar to cross, but you're crossing it. But a lot of number of Duck fans who are like, this is just where it's going. The previous system was archaic and was just what we were used to. And I'm like, one, you shouldn't be that excited about going to play Big X ball after we ran the ball 19 consecutive times and you blew a 21-point lead. Iowa City is going to be tough for y'all. But that's also besides the point. I'd say, and I've been on Twitter, this isn't to divide like an alliance, whatever, between Oregon and Washington, because there are, and I think the three of us need to spend less time on Twitter or X or that that fucking app, whatever it's called now. Fuck you, Elon. You destroyed Twitter, but you couldn't destroy the momentum behind college football realignment. Come on, man. If you could have focused your energy on that shit, we could still be operating as business as usual and whatever. But like every Husky fan I know is like, well, like I'm glad we're safe, but fuck. And like they didn't want to never play the Apple Cup anymore. And I thought it was very cute that presidents and board of trustees, member for both Oregon and Washington, are like, we're going to do everything we can to uphold years-long traditions. And I'm open to playing Oregon again in all sports for as long as time. The price Oregon starts at $10 million. You're the ones who left us for dead, 10 mil, and that's just for football. At least 1 mil for the other sports. That's the starting number if you want to talk. Follow us on Patreon and then send a message to our Substack. It costs $3 to send a first message, and then our intern or Andre Nicotino or super secret producer Skinder will reach back out if we're interested. But that 10 mil is the starting point. And I don't like this is just one of those things. Like, were we at a loss for great college football matchups every week from 10 in the morning till 1 a.m. Eastern time? I don't.
But that's not even what it's creating. That's not. They're not even creating. They're ripping that apart. They're losing that.
I don't even understand why anyone's excited about this, because it's not even like Oregon and Ohio State are playing each other this year. They didn't need to be in the same conference to do it. We've never been at a loss for exciting non-conference matchups. This new normal doesn't add anything we didn't have before.
Yeah.
It just makes different suits richer. And I think we're in this weird era of social media fanboys, like people who bow at the feet of Elon Musk or whatever person is in the net. You don't know who runs ESPN. You don't know who runs Fox. That money that they're getting is not trickling down to you.
Yeah, they don't care about you, but your eyeballs. That's what
I
don't understand that line.
I can understand any fan of Oregon or Washington or any fan of the Arizona schools and Utah who know where they're going to be playing football in the next 5 to 10 years and know what TV channel they're going to be on, and it being like it seemed like the whole thing was burning down. I'm glad we're safe. I no ill will to anyone who feels that.
Yep.
Other than that, what is anything is being added to the college football fan experience? Don't even think about other sports yet, because there's a lot to unpack with other sports. The college football fan experience, what is being added? I dare anyone to try and say one thing that's being added to this, because I guarantee you it's something we already have.
Yeah. And from the fans' perspective, okay, so I've seen 4 real arguments for backing Oregon and Washington to leave to go to the Big Ten. Number one's money. We've already talked about that. That is a losing argument right there. The other is the perception that the Big Ten is superior to the Pac-12. The Pac-12 has had more national championships than the Big Ten since 2002. The Pac-12 also has 5 top 25 teams going into the season, whereas the Big Ten has 4. So I don't understand. Is it perceived that the Big Ten's better? Because the numbers are saying that the Pac-12 has had more success.
It's the networks making you think that. That's what I'm saying.
100%.
I'm not a tinfoil hat like brainwasher kind of thing, but
which is what
you have been
what's going to stop that?
Think that for over a decade.
You really think the media covering the Big Ten isn't going to look at the West Coast part of the Big Ten and not continue to talk shit about USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And so, but then the other thing that I see is that a national championship's easier to get in the Big Ten. Like you said, Terry,
it's harder.
We fucking ran it down their throat 18 straight times.
Oregon and Washington harmed their chances of ever winning a national championship.
100%. Because if you get the Pac-12 was a power 5 conference. If you run the table in the Pac-12, you're in. And if the Pac-12 is so much less superior than the Big Ten, you shouldn't have a problem doing that.
A thing I'm infuriated by is because the expanded college football playoff field was going to solve a lot of this insecurity within conferences. We were going to move to a 12-team playoff, which meant just about every conference would have a seat or a seat and a half at the table. You're going to get that opportunity.
Yeah.
And we're going to let it play out for the rest of this decade of the 20s and then revisit it. We never even got to see it. And that was going to give like schools in the Mountain West a chance. schools in the American Athletic Conference a chance, school Conference USA, all these other schools that have had really great teams that have been overlooked because of the perception of the conferences that they play in that go 12-0, 13-0. Those schools like University of Texas, San Antonio, Tulane, these schools that have put great teams together, they were going to get that chance too. And you'd have a 12-team playoff where the cream would have risen to the top and no one would have been able to doubt who belonged there. Of course, there'd be like the 13th team or the 14th team. You'd be like, oh, did they get snubbed or whatever? But it's the same way in March Madness. There's not a spot for everybody. And at that point, with 12, I'm an advocate for the 64-team playoff in college football because I love chaos. And I understand that that's not a realistic thing right now, but also you could have had that 12-team playoff. No one would have been like someone who had a chance, who deserved to be there, didn't get a chance to be there like they currently have with a 4-team playoff and the number 5 team that has a reasonable chance of winning it. We had the perfect opportunity to see if that system worked for this alignment that we've been rolling with for, I mean, I know some conferences have moved, teams have moved a little bit, but basically what we've been rolling with for the last 40 years.
Yeah. 100%, man. 100%. And let me just finish the list here. The number 4 reason is exposure. Can I just remind people that there are 1.78 billion people with an iPhone? 1.78 billion. And also, if you're anywhere except the United States, where are you going to watch college football? You don't have an option. Apple provides that option to you. And why do you think the NFL is playing games in London and Mexico? They're paving the road for football to be an international sport. So you want to talk about exposure? Oregon's built their brand. Give them credit for what they've done. Oregon has built their brand. Hold on. Oregon's built their brand in the United States. You want exposure? You want exposure? Get exposure on those 1.78 billion iPhones where Apple TV is automatically downloaded onto them.
Yeah. And how many iPhones are an iPhone 8? Because I'm pretty sure it's only one, and I'm holding it right here, and it still works.
I've seen comments on social media about this, about the global reach, and people being like, no one cares about Pac-12 football outside of the U.S. And that is the most naive statement I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yes. No one cares about American football outside of the U.S. for the most part.
Yeah, but then unless you are like, I don't know, a Pac-12 alumni who lives overseas, who's been dying to watch their team, or your parents went there and you grew up in London and you've always heard about these games and you want to join in and start rooting them on. I mean, it is opportunistic, and that's the part about, it's not just the global reach is huge, and it's also where college football could have gone. Like you said, Benny, the NFL has already been working towards. The NFL didn't give up on Europe after the NFL Europe failed. That tells you exactly what you need to know about what will happen with football as a global sport within the next decade. And that is a missed opportunity by Oregon, by Washington. And I don't blame ASU, Arizona, and Utah for bouncing. No. I guess Colorado, whatever. They don't even count in my mind because they really never were a Pac-12 member. They were just here for a cup of tea or whatever. The part about the exposure though that I think is interesting, and I think you touched on this, and I didn't mean to overshout you, but I think that the biggest problem with the deal that the Pac-12 got that Oregon didn't like wasn't linear TV. It wasn't anything about streaming. It had everything to do with the potential of their brand being exposed. And I think they knew the writing beyond the wall that most of their fans aren't real fans. They put their TVs on the weekends.
Yeah.
They buy the gear because they think it's cool, because Nike puts out all of the new templates and designs as Oregon designs and templates first, but they're not going to pay for a subscription because they're not real fans.
Yeah.
A subscription-based model puts you in control of your own destiny. They had no faith in themselves. They had no faith in their brand. They were afraid of what the public would actually see about how popular, how great of a brand. They are a brand with a lot of reach, I will say that. And not because of themselves, but because of Nike.
Yeah.
And because of Phil Knight. but a lot of it is hollow. A lot of the support is hollow. It means nothing. And I think that deal, I think that model would have exposed them, and they could not handle that fact. So they went, and whether that's greener pastures or not is to be determined. But for the next 6 years, you can't compare their situation with ours. Like that's not even fair. Because if it's we went to an equivalent Big Ten and they went to this Big Ten and we'll see how it plays out, then I get it. Like, it's on. But to be like, well, we're better off than where you are, like, that's the part that makes me the most angry.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. But, like, don't come dancing on our grave because you're the ones who ran away, because you're the cowards. You're the spineless losers who are so afraid of actually facing yourself in the mirror and realizing that you are full of shit as a brand and as an athletic department.
100%. I agree with that 100%. They weren't willing to bet on themselves. The one thing, going back to the global outreach, right? People going, well, no one would watch the Pac-12 outside of the West Coast. I just want to point to what the NBA did 35, 40 years ago when they started building up, hey, let's make this game international. Let's start going into Europe. And they had a whole campaign. It was like NBA World or NBA International. I forget what the name was, but they had like the Dikembe Mutombo go back to, was it the Congo? I believe it's where Zaire, right? And so, they did a lot of promoting and really just promoting in places like China, in places like Europe. And now, fast forward 35 years, now you have the Houston Rockets GM getting in trouble from the NBA because the Chinese government took offense to something he said, right? So you have to admit, and you cannot argue that basketball now is a global game. And that's because of what the NBA did. The NFL has way more money. The NFL has way more of a following than what the NBA did back then. So it will become a global game. If that's what the people, the fat cats in the suits want, that's what they're going to get. And I think that is what's being missed by schools like Oregon, who A, aren't willing to bet on themselves, but B, I legitimately think that a huge chunk of this decision is being made by boomers who don't understand the dynamics of how the business of entertainment is going right now. And I tweeted this out, and I truly believe that this is a great example. The people who are saying that the Apple deal doesn't compare to the Big Ten deal are the same people who would have been on the Blockbuster board of executives that laughed Netflix out of the room. That's the equivalence that I see looking forward.
Yeah, man.
What about looking forward?
Yeah.
What about looking forward?
What's been done is done. It's absolute bullshit. It's a travesty. It's embarrassing for everyone else.
Not for us.
Who decided that money over everything and threw everybody under the bus to get there. Everybody. Let's not get it twisted. Oregon and Washington athletes, including football players, will have a shitty time performing for their programs.
Yo, I've made that flight from Oregon and Washington to Minneapolis, and that's Nebraska's closer. But other than that, it's a long
6.5 hours almost to Rutgers.
All non-football teams are not getting chartered jets, so there are no direct flights from Eugene to any of these places.
We need to have a separate episode about all the every other sport, because they're the ones getting fucked.
Well, yeah, 100%.
Dude, it was disheartening. Oregon softball player tweeted that she was unhappy with this, and a lot of Oregon fans were calling her the C word and shit on Twitter. I'm like, can you? I understand you guys are happy that you're going to the Big Ten. You don't have to be scared anymore. But this is a student athlete at the school you support. Can you shut the fuck up? For a second, and listen to someone actually impacted by this decision. Oh man. So looking forward, college football and other college sports will be played in 2023 and 2024.
Let's start with 2023.
And I will say it still sucks. I am mad. I'm sad. I'm seething, but I just finished my second Bud Light of the episode. I'm feeling a little punchy, a little spicy. Roger Sherman of The Ringer has already dedicated his support to Oregon State football this year. So has many other people. Yahoo Sports ran a feature saying, to the casuals who don't like this, you have a solution. Cheer for Oregon State. And there was a great late 80s comedy called Major League that had this exact same plot. A team that had no other options and had nothing in the future beyond the season set before them. And a great man, team captain, catcher of that year's Cleveland Indians team, now renamed the Cleveland Guardians, Jake Taylor, said there's only one thing left to do. And a sultry, sad Roger Dorn said, "What's that?" And Jake says, "Win the whole fucking thing." And Willie Mays Hayes, portrayed perfectly by Wesley Snipes, stands up and says, "Yeah," as Charlie Sheen as Rick Wilding Vaughn just smiles, and Dennis Haysbert as Pedro Serrano, the voodoo man with the bad attitude, just yells, "Yes!" And he wakes up bats. And you know what happens? They win the whole fucking thing, or they almost win the whole fucking thing. They don't. It's not the World Series. They stop it when they win the wild card in the playoffs because it's a movie and it can't last that long. But they get their Hollywood Disney ending, and that's what we can hope for, at least for this year, at least for the intermediary. I'm calling upon everyone. I want to call upon the damn podcast and Beaver Blitz and the Beaverman Beat and Marvin Beaverman and his legion of supporters, and Damnation and Chainsaw Crew and fucking everyone with any platform whatsoever. Let's pump the outreach as hard as we ever have before to non-Beavs. I feel like in the past we've been like, we are our own community. We're the shit. We don't really care. We like to have our own sort of insular society, and that's part of what makes college sports great. We have, you don't really get it unless you're part of it, and that's fine. And I get that too, but we have social capital to a degree that we've never had before by virtue of being fucked. Let's partner with the Cougs at every chance we get. I don't know if there is a Convivial Cougs podcast. I'm wishing that into existence because I think that's an awesome podcast name. But anytime I have been in Pullman, the good people of Pullman have treated me great. I love Cougar fans.
You do love Pullman.
Cougar fans. I hate Cougar fans about 3 days a year when we're playing you in football and basketball, because it's difficult to play you, and the Palouse is a hard place to win, and we're gonna have to try and win a game there this year. But it's bigger than that. All those SEC commercials where they say over and over again, it just means more. This year, it for real means more. Let's, any fan you have that cheers for any school not Oregon who's in your life, get Oregon State on their radar. Work that social capital, work those channels as much as you can, build up that sympathy, because we are fucked. We are fucked in a way that an athletic department has never been fucked before. What's good about it is us and the Cougs have each other. And I think there are a lot of actual smart people who don't like what's happening with college football right now, who just need a little bit of a nudge to be like, yeah, you know what? Go Beavs. Someone once told me you can't spell chopping without hope. And there it is right there on the page. And I can see you can't do it. You can't spell it without hope. I can see that. This is an opportunity we have before us. Rally the dam, rally the nation, whatever, all the fucking taglines we've tried using in 30 years of whatever. This is the point of the podcast, listeners, where I'm waving my arms like crazy. It's a podcast for your ears and not for your eyes. But just Matt, you can hear the arm waving noises right now. I'm basically hitting my walls and knocking things off of the walls that are hanging there because I'm so fired up.
We'll even share the best college town in the Pac-12 title with Wazoo.
Yeah, why
absolutely.
Not?
Yeah. Absolutely. The Parises of the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
It's plural now.
Sister Parises. Yeah.
Sister Parises.
Paris cubed, bitch.
Guys, 2023. So at the beginning of the episode, I said I feel anger, and that is true. And that's the strongest feeling. But the optimism is for future looking. But the optimism for 2023 is at an all-time high. Everything has come together. This football team is in the top 25 and underrated. They're on people's radar, but they're not on people's radar enough. This team is good and has the potential to do something really, really special. They have a very favorable schedule. They have probably the best team that they've had since 08.
15 years, probably. Yeah. 14 years.
And they have that favorable schedule, right? So it's all there. You have the new side of Reeser up. Oh, that in itself just gives me tingles up my spine. You have a school that has always embraced that underdog, blue collar working mentality, having all the chips stacked up against them. They got fucked over for all of the reasons of what the school stands for, right? We don't chase the money. We don't chase the clout. We're here to do one job, and that's to win, right? Beaver fans have been mistaken as cheerful, nice people. Fucking throw that shit away this next year. Reeser is going to be a house of hells for every single team walks in there.
Multiple hells.
Yeah.
Multiple hells.
Yeah.
All the hells.
More hells than Paris is.
Oh, it is going to be, like you said, piss and vinegar. It's going to be venom raining down on these teams.
Has there been a team this talented ever that clearly also has nothing to lose?
No. I don't know that Oregon State, Washington State, but really Oregon State is in a position that no other team in sports has been in.
People say this like a lot, like especially in like rebuilding things, it's like, oh, nothing to lose, whatever. Like there is literally nothing to lose here.
Yeah.
So all of the pressure, and there's pressure going in. That's still pressure. Like credit to Jonathan Smith. I've watched every media availability waiting to hear him say like, yeah, after this, I'm going to drive down to Eugene. I have a giant can of gasoline and I'm going to set everything on fire. And I'm just going to tear down everything besides Joko, because that's the one contribution they can still make. He's not saying things like that. Jonathan Smith is like, we're focused. We are a damn good football team.
Yeah,
we're focused on the job at hand, which is the 2023 season. He's a good coach. He is a better human being than any of the three of us are combined. But also internally, you know that they're all at least recognizing.
And
this.
A lot of the coaches on that team played for Oregon State, so it isn't people that are just.
They have nothing to lose.
They have nothing to lose, and people that are truly invested in the program.
If this season's a disappointment, what happens? Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. You have nothing to lose.
Fucking, this will be the first time that I think you see Smith run the score up on teams.
Disney has made a lot of sports movies, a lot of movies, right? Where like The Little Giants. I don't know if that was Disney, but it was a movie that I remember growing up.
No, that was Warner Brothers. Like aggressively.
There have been a lot of sports movies made. There has not been one sports movie that even in a fantasy made up world could create a scenario that Oregon State's about to be in. It truly could be such a magical season in so many ways.
It really could be. And
no, it will be. It will be. And then we'll be crying tears of joy at the end as confetti falls down on our 15-0 team that is a national champion and well positioned to go independent with the $100 million emergency fund that the pack has. I don't think we're getting it unless we stick around.
Ready to be a more whatever.
One last thing that I want to say regarding this topic. Can we please fill Autzen this year? Let's fucking do that, because we know Oregon is willing to sell whatever they need to sell at a small margin. So just offer 10, 15% over the market value of the ticket. Oregon will sell out for anything. So fucking let's do that. Let's fill Autzen. I'm going to we are not a violent podcast at all. We are a peace loving. We're here to spread love. But I am taking a week off of work after the Civil War just with the anticipation of something. I am so fucking mad. I'm so mad.
Skipping jail, you're going right to prison.
That's right.
Right. And I believe what you are referring to is the stadium of our arch rival, the University of Oregon Ducks, Thomas J. Autzen Stadium, named for Thomas J. Autzen.
Where'd he go?
Oregon State University.
That's what I thought.
So cute they did that.
Oh my God. Well, this took a uptick in optimism that I was not expecting at the beginning of the episode. Anything else?
Yes.
On realignment, JP?
I got to shout out. The Natural at A Foster 13 on X, who started some momentum around participating.
Oh, hell yeah.
With Damnation, the NIL collective for Oregon State. And we posted this, like, this is the most critical time to to support our student athletes. And that can be in whatever way, shape, or form you want. But if you've ever been on the fence about doing something to their benefit, now is the time. We participated. We contributed to Damnation.
Yes, we did.
We were very much eclipsed by some other Beaver fans who definitely did their part. And I wanna say thank you again to A. Foster, but also to everybody who's contributed to Damnation. And I think that's just like one channel again to show our support and appreciation to these athletes who right now their worlds have been turned upside down. So the pool that Damnation's putting together for all student athletes at Oregon State that they partner with is something you can really make a pretty good impact on. So I hope to see more of that, I guess. And I think, like you said, Terry, like we got to get everybody involved. It's not just Oregon State fans, Oregon State grads. And so I don't want to lose that momentum.
Your coworker at the water cooler who's like, man, this seems kind of fucked up. Don't just be like, yeah, it is. Like, be like, how much time do you have? I will schedule an 1.5-hour Zoom meeting to talk to you about how shitty this is and play 2 episodes of the Belligerent Beavs podcast back to back for you. Like, roll with that momentum, baby.
Yeah. Just don't let up. Don't cave. Don't give in.
We've got nothing to lose.
We've got nothing to lose. Actually, we have everything to lose. Let's put it that. Let's be clear. We do as fans in the athletic program. We have everything to lose. So don't let up. Let's continue to make this Beaver fan bigger. I think that the school right now deserves it. I think that every fan agrees that this is this. In a weird way, might be our only time. It might be our only time ever again.
Yeah, I mean that's the worry. Is that are things ever going to be the same again? And I think that is the crux of the frustration. Is this money, Oregon, Larry Scott, whoever you want to blame, is going to put us and a very, very small group of other schools right now in a position where, is this thing that we love and have rallied around and have a community around and have these memories around, is it going to cease to exist? I think that is probably an extreme situation, but I think you can definitely say with a straight face, like, are things ever going to be the same again? And that's the fear.
Yeah. Looking ahead, because there's rumors galore. I don't want to beat a dead horse. So there's options out on the table. The Beavs have options potentially. I don't know how many of them are viable. I don't know how many of them are realistic, but at least what's been thrown out there into is it the Xverse now? Whatever it is.
Just keep saying Twitterverse. Fuck you.
Okay, Twitterverse.
The Xverse.
There are fans who want Oregon State to just figure out a way to get to the Big 12. There's also, of course, joining the Mountain West, which I think we know, and we talked about it last week. I don't want to go after it again, but that would be insanely difficult for Oregon State for a variety of reasons. We talked about the running budgets and operating under a certain type of budget and understanding how to do that and balancing things to be able to do that. Last year, there was only one school in the Mountain West who didn't turn a profit in their athletic department.
Who did not turn a profit.
Okay. And that was San Diego State, because they built a brand new stadium. Every other school, as little as it might have been for only $240, San Jose State, but they all turned a profit. They turned a profit with literally expenses in the 50 million range at most.
Boise State was at 69 million, or maybe that was the year before. But
either way, they all turned a profit. Oregon State, of course, did not turn a profit last year. Actually, only 4 schools did turn a profit in the pack, and it was Cal, Wazoo, Utah, and Oregon. Wazoo was the only one comparable to us with their expenses, and it was the same, like 85, 87
Cal
million.
is the most in debt of any.
I know, and the emptiest stadium.
But which is why they probably were flipping a profit. They had to cut costs somewhere.
They had to.
Anyways, but like the point is, like, we lost $4 million last year as an athletic department, of course, because we had the cushion of a TV deal. So the Mountain West, to me, after seeing these numbers, feels even
stable.
No, even more problematic. Because we don't know. Not to say we can't learn, not to say we can't figure it out, but we are not operating under the same pressure and circumstances on a budgetary standpoint.
If we're not turning a profit with a $95 million athletic budget, so we don't know how to turn a profit with a $55 million athletic budget.
Yeah, essentially. I think that operating on a profit in the Pac-12 didn't matter because you didn't need to.
Sure.
And
oh my God,
there's
this
one
is the
more
longest
option
segment ever. But all right, continue.
It's picking and choosing how the pack is rebuilt and the brand is diminished. But I don't think Stanford wants to go anywhere else. So we're aligning with Stanford. I think that we could stick with Wazoo as well. And then I think Cal really has no choice. So let's say next week, when we talk next week, what are we going to be at? Where will we be? Or we could be where we're at right now.
You go, Terry.
Where do I think we'll be? Where do I think we'll be at, or where do I want us to be at?
The Athletic just reported that the Big 12 is not discussing adding Oregon State or San Diego State at this time.
Or Washington State, Oregon State or San Diego State.
Yeah, that was the rumors that they were talking to Oregon State and San Diego State.
What I think will happen, I think at this time next week on Sunday, August 13th at 11:22 p.m. Central Time, 9:22 p.m. Pacific Time, we will have absolutely no more information about where Oregon State is headed. What I want is Big 12. I want the Big 12 to add us and Wazoo. I think Benny made a great point on Twitter. I'm still not at the point where I'll call it X. X marks the spot of Ben's good point, though, that the Big 12 is controlled by ESPN. Pac-12 After Dark was and will be a profitable product for ESPN again this year. I think they can still protect that. Having games in Corvallis and in Pullman and teams familiar with the Four Corner schools to play will be good. I think it makes financial sense. I think them being at 18 to match the Big Ten's 18 makes a lot of sense as well. So that's what I'm hoping for. Also, the only cool thing that could ever possibly happen with the Big Ten, even I'm here in the middle of Big Ten territory. I go to every Golden Gopher tailgate and I wear Oregon State stuff, and I'm only going to be more demonstrative about that this year and next year, getting ready for, I can't wait for Oregon fans to show up and to be like, who is this fucking random Oregon State fan?
Dude, I'm coming to Minneapolis. Yes. It's the first time the Ducks play.
I will kick them out of my tailgate. And
I will take another week off of work.
That's Oregon State guy. He's kind of here. There's another Beav in the parking lot that I tailgate in too, who flies a Beaver flag on his tailgate. So we already got a thing. The Big Ten can naturally, there's 18 teams in the Big Ten. That makes no sense. It only makes sense for them to add 2 more teams so they can be at 20 teams, the Big 20, or as I like to call it, the Big 10. And for those teams, I nominate Oregon State and Washington State. I still won't like it, and I'll still talk shit about it. But like I said, like I've said to every Oregon fan, like, just be happy about your life raft. Shut the fuck up and float away. Just shut the fuck up and float away. Were people celebrating on their lifeboats as they paddled away from the Titanic, or did they just go like, oh my God, like, I can't wait to hug my mom when I get home, or blah 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 blah.
Thank God I'm alive.
They weren't yelling back at the Titanic, being like, oh, think of how much better of a fit this is. You will totally dominate at the bottom of the ocean. Like, get on your lifeboat, float away and shut the fuck up. Float away and shut the fuck up. And also, if we are added to the Big Ten, or Big 10, as I like to call it, I'll happily get on that life raft and float to the conference territory where I currently live, and still not enjoy getting to see Oregon State in the Midwest ever, because there is 97 teams in the conference, but whatever. So that is a long way of saying, what am I predicting for next week? Nothing. What am I hoping for? Big 12, weird, funny joke possibility. That's not a possibility. The Big 10. Fuck Oregon.
Yeah. Well, first I'll say Titanic would have been a much different movie if Rose slowly shoved Jack off of the parcel of wood they were on as she smirked the whole way, which is what Oregon did. But I will second your point. I don't think we'll have news next week.
There'll be nothing. It's going to be a while.
And I hope that we don't have news next week. What Oregon State should do is let this simmer. There's no rush.
At this point. Yeah.
There's no rush. And there's a couple things that could happen. Oregon State could have that magical season. I've seen national pundits. So this isn't just my looking through my rose-colored glasses here, but national pundits are saying, Oregon State's a dark horse to play in the college football playoffs this year. So that could happen. And that's not going to hurt our chances at the negotiating table. The other thing that could happen is we are the darlings of the college football world, right? Like you said, there are several national pundits that are saying, hey, I'm all in on Oregon State. That is going to continue. Oregon State's story is going to be told, and it's going to be told in several different ways on several different platforms, and it is going to get in front of people. And if Oregon State continues to win, that becomes an even bigger story. And I think if they play their cards right, there could be pressure on ESPN or the Big 12 to open up those doors for negotiation. The other thing is, I think ESPN, who is in a financial predicament right now, if you're not aware and do watch ESPN and are wondering why half of the personalities are not on ESPN anymore, it's because they couldn't afford to keep their salaries. So ESPN's in a financial predicament, and I'm no exec, but I feel like if I was,
you're kind of an exec, Benny.
If I was an exec for ESPN, I sure as hell would not want Fox to have their flag planted on the West Coast for Pacific time zone and not do it myself. I get Arizona and Arizona State play half the season in the Pacific time zone, whatever. But that's not at the end of the season. And I think that, at most you have one game that you can broadcast, and sometimes you don't have any if Arizona and Arizona State are both on the road. So adding Oregon State and Washington State to the Big 12 makes sense from an ESPN perspective of having that 7 p.m. time slot. And I would say, even though Oregon State and Washington State probably don't bring the most amount of eyes on their own to warrant going into the Big 12, that Pacific time zone is way more important to look at than the eyes that would be on just for Oregon State and Washington State.
And it would just be cool of them to do it. Whereas the Big Ten and SEC, while they have their fans, the optics aren't, I can't even say the optics aren't great, because there are enough people who are huge fans of this. But if you were if the Big 12 is like, you know what, these drunk redheaded stepchildren in the Pacific Northwest, we're going to throw them a lifeline. The optics of doing that, you've already added 6 teams to get to 16. They basically added 8 teams to get to 16 with Oklahoma and Texas leaving. You're smarmy, stuck up, rich kid, whatever. Just add 2 more party schools to keep it flowing. And we basically, we're similar colors to Texas, and Wazoo similar colors to Oklahoma. No one will even know the difference.
Well, and
it'll be way more fun.
Think about it this way: a college football game, 3 hours. ESPN if they were to add Oregon State and Washington State, that's 3 hours of programming that they wouldn't have before each Saturday that they can sell ads for. So that's why, to me, it does make sense. One caveat I will say, from a football perspective, Big 12, obviously. From a perspective of all other sports, even though our budget would be cut, and that would potentially cause programs to be cut when you're looking to save money, that is a huge thing to look at if we join the Mountain West. But if you're looking at a student athlete, you have to look at the Mountain West, because if we're just looking at the student athletes as athletes, sure, join the Big 12, have the team travel to UCF in Orlando, Florida, fine. But if you're looking at these people as student athletes, you don't want the soccer teams going in a bus from Corvallis to Eugene to fly up to Seattle to fly over to Orlando. At that point, they're just athletes, and athletes that you're not paying. And we'll save that for another episode. But you hear, there's never been more talk about the financial side of college football than there has been in the last 2 weeks, which just makes me so mad that we're talking about $50 million a year. Big Ten's making $60 million a year. And you still have fucking these old white boomers that are saying, but there's just not enough to give to these players that are bringing in all this money. So again, different topic for another time, but yeah.
And with the Mountain West, we could have away games in Honolulu.
Albuquerque, San Diego,
Vegas.
Yeah.
We're big Boise fans on this pod as well.
Right.
Fort Collins slaps. All right, JP, answer your own question, and then we have to get out of here.
I would love to see the pack rebuilt. I'll put it that there.
Okay. Rebuild the pack it in.
I know we have to leave, but I want to touch on that and ask you a follow-up question to that, Jay. I've seen a lot of people say that, and I think that is, I would be in favor of that if I just don't know what it looks like. Like, when you say the pack rebuilt, what in your eyes would that look like?
Obviously, still bringing in some Mountain West teams, and it wouldn't have to be a full slate of teams off the get-go, but enough to get a season, an entire academic school year under our belt, and then continue to assess expanding. But it would all hinge on the Apple deal still being around. And I'm not talking about the same base number or hopefully not the same sub numbers, but just something streaming. Because I do think as founding members of this conference, we should show that we've got maybe a little more gall to stick it out and then succeed.
I feel that.
We don't know when that will be announced. What we do know is the three of us will be here to talk about it whenever it happens. That's something you don't need to worry about, Beaver fam. Belligerent Beavs here to stay every week. We'll probably never take a vacation again because I feel like we were taking this for granted. And even if the czar of the NCAA comes in and says, that's it, no more Oregon State sports, we'll still pop on here once a week and talk shit about the people we don't like. And when it comes to, we try to be a more just pro Oregon State pod than anti anybody, but it's not every week that someone blatantly and intentionally leaves us for dead. And when it comes to the University of Oregon, I don't fucking like those guys.
Never have.
No,
I don't like them one bit. They've got a real ugly ass face, and when I look at it, I don't have fun, and I don't like them. So fuck them. And if you're happy about what's happening in college sports in the last 96 hours, then fuck you. But not fuck you to our dear listeners. Thank you so much for being here for the 102nd episode. We really, really, really appreciate your guys' support now more than ever, especially because I guess Kleofkoff could come in and say, not only is there no deal, you guys are shut down as well. So please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. Share the show with a friend, but more important, share Oregon State fandom and the awesomeness of cheering for this absolute banger-ass community with a friend. That's what we're doing. We're rallying the dam, rallying the legend, building it bigger than ever before because we're the shit. We're the darlings of the sport and the nation and everything that we hold dear. And we're not going to be shy about it. I think we've maybe been a little shy, a little charming. It's like, oh, we're just kind of cute and fun. Look at how cute we are in the past. No, we're aggressively awesome. And you should be awesome with us and cheer for us. So tell every single fucking person you know to cheer for Oregon State or to go fuck themselves. You don't have to be that aggressive about it. Only be that aggressive to Duck fans that you know, because we are very, very mad. And I did say I was going to swear less on the podcast, but I also didn't think that this much realignment was going to happen this soon after us just restarting. I still will swear less. I promise, Mom. I'm sorry. Not really, though. My name is Terry Horseman, at Terry Horseman on Twitter. I'm still calling it that, at Terrence Horseman on Instagram.com. Follow me there. Follow me anywhere. Follow me into hell, where we'll still be talking about Oregon State athletics no matter what happens. Joined, as I always am, by my best friends from college, my brothers in Beaver, Benjamin Lawrence, Sebastian Wehage. He's Benny with the good quaff. Benny Bedlam, because he's fucking crazy, folks. But right now, he's really fucking logical and right about a lot of things, mainly being mad at realignment. Benny Bowl Game, Benny Blast Off. He's at Benny L1986 on Twitter, on Instagram, on Threads, on Blue Sky. Blue Skies are gonna clear up, put on a happy face because Oregon State's going to the college football playoff. Benjamin Lawrence, Sebastian Wehage, dapper as ever, and of course here with both balls. That's an inside joke. JP Bertram, at JP Bertram on Instagram, and at the Trill J on Twitter. Twitter. That's at the _Trill_J, because he's too Trill to be real. And you can follow us wherever you are on social media. It's at Belligerent Beavs on Twitter /X, Belligerent Beavs on Instagram, Belligerent Beavs on Facebook, Belligerent Beavs on Threads, Belligerent Beavs on Blue Sky, Belligerent Beavs on TikTok, Belligerent Beavs on Apple TV Plus streaming, winning the national championship of podcasting and shit, the Heisman of podcasting and shit, on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you get your podcast. We'll be back next week, recording again next Sunday, August 13th. Who knows what's gonna happen in the next 7 days? I hope it's less eventful than the past 7 days have been. But we will be here to talk about it all, and hopefully we get a chance to actually talk about some real fucking football and who's playing what. A lot of good news coming out of Oregon State fall camp. We are very excited to get into the position previews. And of course, we got the predictions episode coming up, the famous predictions episode that Benny has made famous. It means so much more this year than it ever has in the past. And until then, thank you again, dear listener, for tuning in to our fair podcast in our cute little corner of the internet. Go Beavs, chop 'em, and remember, you can't spell chop 'em without hope. So chop 'em,
chop 'em,
and bring back Bernice.
Oregon can fuck all the way off.